This pump needs to come off of here. Hey there, welcome back to Farmcraft. This is part 2 of trying to get this old Johndeere 1010 running again. In yesterday's video, I discovered that the injection pump needed a rebuild, and I had fully torn into it, and now we're ready to start getting this thing back in action, hopefully. While I'm waiting for those parts to arrive, I'm trying to get ready. I disconnected the glow plug wire from the key, and actually right now I've got it directly on the battery, because I am checking to see which glow plugs work with a thermal camera, and you can very clearly see that one lighting up, so that one works. I've disconnected it now because I know it works. This one is still connected but nothing. That one works and nothing. That heat you're seeing there is this thing in the sun, but that right beside it is cold. So basically I've got 2 glow plugs that work, this and this. I've fiddled with the wires, that's not it. So those glow plugs would need to be replaced. But hopefully those 2 will be enough to get me popping off, and then they can heat up the engine. And yeah, I'm hopeful that we can get it to start. I think the glow plugs are going to be something I didn't do with the starting fluid, and I think that's going to be key. And another thing I wanted to check is the air cleaner. I'm not sure why they have it disconnected like they did, so I thought I'd better take a look. Well, it's full of water. Rusty water and leaves. Yeah, that certainly wasn't going to help anything. Yeah, safe to say they just disconnected it to not have to fool with it. So, kind of like I'm going to do. See if we can get this thing running. So basically, this thing draws the fresh air in there. See, it's just a straight pipe down to the bottom, which would be sitting in this cup. So you put oil in that cup, so the air has to bubble through that oil. That cleans a lot of it. Then it goes up through the center here, which is just a bunch of screen, so stacked screens right on top of each other. You can see that, all the layers. But of course they're all rusty, and you know, iron oxide's not like the greatest thing to be sending into your air intake. It's like your options would be to buy a new one of these, which I think is a bad option. If it gets to that point, I will probably just buy a different air cleaner that's designed for that, what is that, 2-inch. If I really wanted to clean this, you know, if I was going to do a historic preservation kind of thing, you could stick it in Evapo-Rust, wash it out real aggressively with diesel or kerosene or something, and you could make it reasonably serviceable again, I think. But I just don't think it's worth all that trouble. I think this is going to be a headache. It's not going to clean as well as a modern air filter will. One other thing I really should have done before I started cranking this thing at all is not drain the oil, but at least crack this and see what comes out, because water goes to the bottom. If there's a bunch of water in here, especially considering it was over full. Uh-oh. Over full. It's making oil. That's certainly possible. So let's go ahead and do it now. It's been sitting a couple days. Oh, man. I have to go get the impact. You don't like using an impact on these, because if it zips it off too quick, suddenly you got oil going everywhere. So I've got this thing on low. Yeah, definitely oil, no water, and no evidence of water at all. So yeah, something went right. It being over full means either someone overfilled it, or more likely diesel was getting into the oil. But that's a problem for a later time. Area diesel came through. It's got my pump, all the specifications, and here's the good stuff. So this is a one-piece weight cage and does not require a flex ring. They put the timing mark on there for me. And he even went through and wrote the ones that are important. 25 inch-pounds, 85 inch-pounds. Awesome. This is my cam ring, this is theirs, and I measured it, and theirs actually has a little bit less wear. These are slightly thicker. So I'm going with theirs. Weight cage is going away, getting replaced with a new one piece. This guy, which did clean up and I'm sure would work, but man, it's pitted, it's pretty rough, is getting replaced with, I think, a brand new one. That looks brand new. This pitted up pivot shaft that's seen better days is getting replaced with this one, which looks perfect. Axle shaft definitely getting replaced. This isn't just a new shaft. This part is no longer available from the manufacturer, and Area Diesel Service is making brand new ones in-house. How cool is that? New gasket, all the O-rings and everything that I'm going to need here. So let's start putting this thing back together. Down inside this rotor there is a delivery valve, which has to do with the amount of fuel that gets delivered. Spring and a plunger. And there's the valve. Alright, so old delivery valve, new delivery valve. Of course, they look identical. Spring and a new plunger. And then this guy. Now that gets torqued. So this goes to 85 inch-pounds. This is the rotor going into the pump body. And these are the plungers going in. This is really the heart of the high pressure pump. I talked about this in the last video and we'll look at it again in just a minute here. So I didn't realize that when I was taking it apart, the tightness of this determines how far those can travel outward. Oh yeah, look at that. This spring needs to be tightened very precisely because it determines how much fuel is pumped. And the best way to do that is to hook the pump to compressed air. Took a little ingenuity to figure out how to get that hooked to my air. Little piece of garden hose, couple hose clamps. We're good to go. This dimension, they told me for my pump, needs to be 1.957. See, now I can turn the air on and those will spring out and it will hold them out while I measure. Overshot just a little bit. This is 1.955, so just a hair more. And this is what really determines how much fuel is pumped with each stroke. So kind of important to get it right. 1.957. Perfect. You can see as this thing is spinning around and the pressure from the vane pump pushes the plungers out, it's just a tiny little stroke. And then when it goes around, it's going to contact here and here, and both plungers get driven in at the same time very rapidly and generates high pressure. Then the vane pump pressure pushes them back out, again, just a tiny little stroke. And again, they get pushed back in. But of course, that's just one cylinder firing worth of fuel. It's not much. Weight cage. This has a little divot there, and there's a mark on the rotor there. So those need to line up, or you won't be in time. You can see how those weights kind of pivot. And when they pivot, they're going to push up on this washer collectively. That is going to push on this, and that goes up in that upper part where the throttle has an effect. Just using a little bit of synthetic grease. Starting to look like a pump again. I'll torque this bolt in a second, but first I want to put the shaft in. This ensures that the weights stay in place. Alright, now I need to put the cam screw back in. Remember, that's this little ball that has this funky tip on it. So that screws down in there, and what it's screwing into is that cam ring, and it affects the timing. It will be able to move the cam ring back and forth, and you can see in that little window there that that is your timing advance. Now this does make me a little nervous because I still don't have that tool. It needs to be torqued to 400 inch-pounds or 33 foot-pounds. I really don't have any choice other than to trust my Torx bit not to break it. Shouldn't break it torquing it down. I don't like pulling on that hard. That was 23. I really don't like this, but I don't have any choice. I have no way of torquing this thing other than this. So this is 33. Whew! One's enough. That felt risky. But it's in, and it moves, and it spins. Click. .25 inch-pounds on those, just not that tight. You know, these wires here are for tamper-proofing, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and put them in just to keep these screws from backing out. I'm not worried about me tampering with my job. Just found a piece of brass I could wedge under the wires. It tightens them all up. It is pulling all of the screws in a tightening direction. Done like a true amateur. So that is full throttle. It's pushing that way, and as it spins up and the weights start throwing out, it's going to push this back and take the throttle off. The actual metering valve is this here, so it's the position of that is determining how much fuel is going through. So if I hold full throttle, when the RPMs get too high, it does this and backs the throttle off. And maybe the load increases, so the RPM drops. It does that until it finds the right area on the weight basket, which is really what's governing the top speed. All you have to do is line up that timing mark. That one I can actually see. So that is exactly how it needs to be going on the machine. I haven't touched the engine since we took the old one off, so we should be good to go. It's a nice December morning. Got a pretty heavy frost last night, which is burning off. Should be a nice sunny day. No wind. Great time to put on an injection pump. Did clean this up. O-ring is already on there. There it is. Maybe a problem. The timing marks don't, it's close. Like right there, the timing marks are aligned. But I can't adjust the pump to that point. It has a little bit of adjustment. I'll adjust it as close to that as I can get. But who knows? Maybe the timing was wrong previously. I did not like the fact that the timing marks weren't lining up, but on thinking of it, the flex ring in the old pump had completely been destroyed, and it's possible that because it was a two-piece, it may have rotated some, which would put the timing mark in a different position relative to the rest of the weight basket. This one is fixed, so, and the timing is close, you know, so the shaft goes in with a long key. It's 180 degrees. You'd have to do a full half turn to be off. So I think the fact that I'm close and now I have a weight basket that's not broken, I think the timing is probably right. Okay, I guess I can open my petcocks. Get some fuel go into that pump. See if anything leaks. It is no longer morning. I've been thinking about this and doing some research. There is a little inspection window here where I can look in and see marks on the flywheel, and there is a top dead center mark. Of course, you don't know if you're at top dead center of the exhaust stroke versus the compression stroke. And it doesn't correlate with the mark on that pump. Here's the deal. That pump spins, 1 revolution is injecting fuel into each cylinder. So that means 4 power strokes happened, because it's a 4-cylinder, in 1 revolution. Well, for 4 power strokes to happen on the engine, it has to spin over twice, because it goes up, down with each revolution. And obviously it's 4-stroke. In order to complete a full cycle, you need to go up, down, up, down. So the engine spins twice as fast as the pump. And it engages with a slot. So it can only be either this way or 180 degrees the other way. Those are the only options. So it's either in time or it's 180 degrees out of time. Then once you get it running, you can adjust a little bit here, you know, just get it as happy as you can get it. But the point being, I'm either in time right now or I'm 180 degrees out. And the way we're going to find out is we're going to try to start it. So the first thing I want to do is bleed the fuel system. I've got all of these loose. So petcocks are opened and we can crank this thing over and try to get some fuel pumping. So I have to admit I was a little worried at first. It took quite a bit of cranking to get this thing pumping fuel. I think it was just full of air and possibly airlocked for a little while, but it did start pumping. A lot of air in that pump, I think. Hopefully we won't get a runaway diesel if it does start.
Where's your air intake?
It's over here, and I can completely cover it. Yep, that's my plan if it does.
Alrighty.
Alright, so those 3 seem to be good.
You got decent fuel coming out?
Yeah, that looks reasonable.
Okay.
So one more here. Well, we just had 3 cylinders tightened down with fuel going in and nothing. So the timing might be wrong.
Say again?
Well, that last cranking session, these 3 were all getting fuel and they were all tight.
Okay.
And it didn't pop or anything. All right, so we've got fuel bled to all 4 cylinders. The pump is pumping, so we're good there. Okay. Now the question is going to be, is the timing off? Because I think it should be running at this point. So we're going to try to start it. This is the first real try. So I'm going to take our glow plug wire. We're going to hold it to the positive lead for about a minute. Want to be on YouTube? All right, I think we're good on the glow plugs. Let's hit it. Ready?
Ready.
Huh. No smoke, nothing. That vapor locked it there.
Smoke.
Just did the glow plugs. I'm getting some smoke, but it's more from the starter, I think. Now the issue is what I was thinking earlier when it did not fire on the starting fluid is, do I have compression? And I'm worried I do not. But I do have my compression testing kit now, so what I need to do is check at the glow plugs, which are kind of hard to access here, and it's all dirty. So the first thing I'm going to do is get the power washer out and spray this off. So you might be wondering why I don't just go ahead and pull the glow plug and check the pressure. Well, I don't know if I can show you, but it's a mess back there. Years and years of crud and grime and grease have collected back there, and if I pull that plug now, that's all going to fall right into the cylinder, and I just don't want to do that. That thing was just packed full of dirt and grime before I did that. That looks a lot better now. In order to get those out, I'm gonna have to take this intake off, probably get the fuel lines out of the way. I think I'm gonna end up pulling the injectors anyway. Goodness gracious. Yeah, and talking to a friend of mine, we were talking about like what might have happened with this thing when it developed the coolant leak. Well, they might have discovered the coolant leak when the engine overheated. And if that's the case, then it got parked because it wouldn't run anymore. That may be where we are. I don't know. I confirmed that it was pumping fuel to each of these, but I do not get any smoke out of the exhaust, which tells me the injectors are probably totally clogged. Nothing's getting through. It should still fire on starting fluid though. one glow plug, and that's one of the ones that was actually working. Now that's one that did not work. That one's the one that did work. You can really see the difference. And the last one that did not work. I want to hear what it sounds like with no compression whatsoever. Sun is setting. Disappointing day. I really thought I was going to get this thing running today. I'm going to leave it like this tonight. This is fine. It's not going to get wet under here. It's not going to rain tonight anyway. I will pull the injectors tomorrow. Actually, the first thing I want to do is check the compression, but I don't have time right now. And then we'll pull the injectors and go from there. My diesel compression tester does not have a plug for the glow plug thread that is on this machine. So I'm going to pull one of the injectors and see if those thread in. A lot of them just press in, but these look like they might actually screw in right there. And if that's the case, maybe I can use that. Either way, we're going to get some answers today. Man, I really wish I had been able to check the compression earlier, because that is a pivotal factor here. If I have no compression, well, then you're talking engine rebuild. And the answer to will it start is no. No, it will not. But yeah, let's get this off of here, and we're gonna know what the compression is in this thing today. And I must say this this has evolved into far more than I expected. I expected to come out here, tinker for a little bit, get fuel to the cylinders, and have this thing pop off. Probably not run the best, but at least run. Instead, I ended up doing a full rebuild on the injection pump, which I guess was a little mini win, because it is pumping now, so that's good. But the thing still won't run, so that's not good. Not sure if that's unscrewing or if it's just spinning. It might just be spinning. Maybe not. Yeah, it just pulls straight out. It's not threading. Well, there's your injector, which I think is probably completely clogged. But unfortunately, I don't think I can use this to check my compression. Yeah, I've been looking at these fittings for a while. There is just no way to put this together to work on either the injector or the glow plug. Not without some doing at least. But I have an idea. Here's one of the glow plugs. That is a 9/16 18 thread. I do not have that tap, but I can single point thread it. The issue is these things need to have an air fitting on the end, and that would be kind of hard for me to do on the lathe. So I think what I'm going to do is make a bushing that like this can thread into, and it'll have that thread on the outside and allow me to hook my my gauge to this thing. If you don't understand that, you'll understand it in a minute. Let's get to work. at long last, I have my bushing. This thing threw me a curveball. This project is just fighting me every step of the way. My original plan was to tap this thing M8 1 thread per millimeter, or M8 by 1. Because this adapter with the kit has an M8 by 1 thread on it. Well, I have an M8 by 1 tap. I was trying to tap my bushing so that I could screw this into it. But the tap is a piece of junk. This is a Harbor Freight special from years ago. Basically, the threads of the tap were just getting smashed and it wouldn't cut. And this is just mild steel. And trying to cut it, it wasn't going to cut it, pun intended. And I tried regrinding the end and sharpening it as much as I could, and this tap is just garbage. So, we'll chuck that into the bucket. I called all the local auto parts stores looking for an M8 by 1 tap. Nobody had it. I have a decent set of taps and dies made by Craftsman. This is what I typically use, but this only had M8 by 1 1/4. So I didn't have the right thread. Long story short, what I ended up doing is taking one of the M10 adapters in here, of which there are many, and I turned it down, got that the size of the glow plug, and then turned this to M8, or threaded that to M8 1 1/4 with the die that goes with this tap. And then I tapped my bushing to 1 1/4. So basically I had to machine both sides, and I didn't film the second side because I'm actually running out of time. I want to check this compression today. So at long last, there is my adapter. It's not longer than the glow plug. You need to make sure of that. Otherwise the piston's going to come up and smack it. Let's go check the compression on this darn thing. I've been waiting to do this for days. Alright, I'm not sure how these are actually numbered according to the manual, because I don't have the manual. But I'm going to call it 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is the front of the machine here. Alright, we are ready to test cylinder 1. If this will go on, wouldn't it be funny if it wouldn't? Hey, something went my way. Okay, let's see what we get. Well, there's no Schrader valve in this thing. What the heck? I don't get that. And I'm not even getting to 100, but I'm not sure that that is a legit test because there's no Schrader valve. Man, I just want to check the compression. Well, the pump's fixed. I got to figure out how to get a Schrader valve in line with this. If you're not familiar, there's supposed to be a valve on this thing, which obviously it seems like it must have one because it has the release. So it is supposed to build up pressure in this hose, but not let it back, so that it climbs until it reaches a peak, and then you let the pressure out. But clearly it's not working. Garbage. Okay, this has kind of become a comedy of errors. This is my good compression tester. This is by OTC, and it has Schrader valves in these hoses. So I took the gauge, the OTC gauge off. I took the higher pressure gauge from the cheap tester, put it on here. This goes to a 12 by 1 1/4 thread. I also don't have that tap. I have 12 by 1.5, of course. But I found this, which is actually a thread checker that had the right thread. So I did a little bit of welding on it, and then threaded this to the M8 by 1 1/4 that I do have, so that it would go in my bushing. That's the bushing I made. So now I can thread those together, and I've got a Schrader valve behind here. I've got the high pressure gauge and hoses with a pressure release. Should work, right? Let's go see. I'm going to start with 2 because it's easier to get to. I just want to see if this is going to work. Finally. This thing's running me through the ringer. Let's check some compression. 280. That's not great. See? That's how it's supposed to work. But I think you want at least 300. 280. 280. If you don't get enough compression, you don't get enough heat and pressure to ignite the fuel. All right, cylinder 1. Well, that's no bueno. 200. That is it. Okay, cylinder 3. 240. Cylinder 4. 220. Well, there's your problem, lady. Man. Just going out to check on the cows. Oops. They are not supposed to be in the yard. You guys enjoying that grass? How'd you guys get out? Did you guys tear anything up yet? Yeah, we got them back in. They're disappointed. They're disappointed. Do you mind? They're disappointed. They were enjoying that grass. Yeah, well, I'm disappointed about the track loader. Deal with it. That's life. All right, so there's a couple other things I want to do. So I'm going to put some oil in there, and then we're going to wet test it and see if that increases my compression. That would indicate that it's either the cylinder bore or the piston rings. If it doesn't make any difference, well, then it may be a head gasket. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this gauge to the OTC gauge because it's not going over its range. I wanted to use this one because it might have been 400 or 500, but no such luck. So let me change that out. We'll come back, we'll do a wet test. Okay, here we go with the OTC gauge. This is a gauge I definitely trust. I got 220 on the previous one. A little higher, not much. What would that be? 230. So yeah, 10 psi is not gonna make the difference here. We've got some engine oil. Let's put some in. Put a little more than 10 cc's in there, and I'm gonna go ahead and do all of them. Now let's crank it a little bit. It's probably gonna spray. Yeah, maybe it's time I order a leak down tester, huh? Cylinder 1, wet test. That's not what I wanted to see, but my compression is way better with a wet test. What's that tell you? That tells you it's the rings and the bore. That tells you that this thing needs an engine rebuild. I did an awful lot of work to get to this point, and man, if I had had the compression tester earlier, I would have gotten here a lot earlier. But it is what it is. Ouch. I put the high pressure gauge back on so we can see where it actually lands. Well, I went to 330 there. Now the only easy fix on something like this would be stuck rings. But I think the chances of having stuck rings on all 4 cylinders and getting them unstuck with like Marvel Mystery Oil, I think is about nil. Cylinder 2. 330. Cylinder 3. That one only went up to 290. And 4. 270. This thing's hooped. So a quick review, you can see the initial test that I've got labeled dry. I got between 200 and 280 psi. For a diesel to run, generally you need 300. You want more than that though. I would think in this engine 330, 350 would probably be your target. So I think when it was sputtering and popping and trying to start, that was probably all coming from cylinder 2, which is very close to 300 psi. So for the wet test, I injected oil into each cylinder and then cranked it to spread it around, and that helps the rings seal better against the cylinder wall. It doesn't really do much to valves or head gasket problems that could also be causes of low compression. Because I had such a significant improvement, I think the rings or the cylinder bores are the problem. So in my view, this needs an engine rebuild. I think it's very unlikely there's going to be any other quick or easy fix. So this is the closest I got to starting it in all my attempts, and this was on starting fluid. I think all that sputtering is probably coming from cylinder 2. So will it start? Well, sure it will, with an engine rebuild. Yeah, no, it's not going to start. It's certainly not going to start today. Yeah, this was disappointing. And it worried me the whole time I was working on that injection pump that the compression might be low. And sure enough, it is. So I need to stop and think on what I want to do here. I also need to find out, can you even get parts for something like this to do an engine rebuild? Is it a sleeved engine? Can you get new rings? Can you get new sleeves? All things I need to look into. Luckily at this point, I don't have much more than scrap value in it. So, you know, I'm not really out anything other than my time, which was a lot of time. But that's okay. I actually had fun rebuilding that pump, learned a lot. And the pump works, damn it. That's something of a win. Yeah, I'm grasping at straws here, but I'm going to take what I can get. You know, every time you work on a machine like this, you learn stuff. So now, let's do this. You guys tell me what you think I ought to do with this. I think at the very least, I ought to do an autopsy on it. Pull the engine and really take a look, pull the head, look at the cylinder walls, look at the pistons, and kind of see how everything looks there. I'd also be interested to see inside the crankcase. Considering how rusty that shaft for the injector pump was, I bet you the inside of the crankcase is not looking bueno either. So that would be kind of interesting. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. If you know a lot about these Johndeere 1010s, definitely let me know. Is this something that's worth rebuilding? Are these things kind of considered garbage and it's not worth your time? I'd like to hear what you guys think. It's not the ending of the video that I had in mind, but here we are. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.